Hello and welcome. My name is Kathleen Gagney. It is my privilege to be the Executive Director of Mechanics Hall on Main Street in Worcester, Massachusetts. Part of our Many Voices project, Mechanics Hall proudly presents videos that spotlight many of the artists, musicians, scholars, scientists, and other remarkable people who cross our stage. The library of videos will include performances, chats, interviews, and demonstrations. Mechanics Hall is unique in the world. It is our mission to inspire and enrich the lives of all generations through cultural, educational, and community experiences. Built in 1857, the hall is considered one of the world's best concert halls. It is regarded as our nation's finest pre-Civil War performance hall. It is an architectural masterpiece, and it has superb acoustical qualities. We have chosen to offer the Many Voices videos free of charge for you to enjoy and share with your friends and family. I do ask you, however, to consider supporting our video programming by making a financial contribution through our website, mechanicshall.org. Many thanks. If you like what you see, please give it a thumbs up, and I urge you to subscribe to our channel. Now let's begin. Hello and welcome. Mark Mummert, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us again.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
We've already talked to Mark in another video about a vocal recital he performed here recently. But today we're going to talk about a harpsichord program that you pulled together just for Mechanics Hall, which I'm so thrilled and grateful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Mark, tell us about the harpsichord. What is it? Where does it come from? Why do people still want to listen to it?
Well, a harpsichord, organs probably predated harpsichords, but organs were probably only in larger buildings and not in homes. So I think a harpsichord really came about as wanting to have an instrument, instrument that would be playable with the hands, like the organ was, but in the home. So I think the original creators of the harpsichord, found a way to get strings set up in a fashion that the strings could be plucked, but when the keys were depressed. So it has an effect a bit like a harp does. That the strings of, if you can imagine the strings of a piano. Set on its side, and then a harpist plucks those strings. So the harpsichord, those same strings are plucked as keys are depressed. And of course, what makes it a charming instrument and fun to play is it's entirely mechanical. I don't have to plug it in. But everything when I sit down and press a key goes to this, goes to that, goes to this, to make the sound. A player, like a harpist or an organist, has the sense that they really can control how the instrument is sounding. Why do I think it's still relevant today? Well, I think it makes a sound very original and unique. It's not a sound that it really doesn't sound like a harp when it plays, even though you hear the plucking. It's identifiably different. It certainly doesn't sound like an organ. And people who love piano music can hear that it's quite different from the piano. Yeah. And even though today we have beautiful pianos, like the instruments here at Mechanics Hall, there is a way in which the repertoire that was composed for the harpsichord really does sound best, I think, on the harpsichord. Even though many modern-day pianists play a lot of the repertoire that was written for harpsichord on pianos.
Right.
I jumped at the chance to have my own harpsichord because I really think it is an interesting original instrument. And many people assume that harpsichords are really only used for music of the Renaissance or the Baroque.
I was going to ask you about that.
But I'm going to be playing some pieces today that were just written in the last 2 to 3 years by composers living today who want to write for the harpsichord. So I think it is still a relevant and, if you will, modern instrument. It's just perhaps not a standard instrument that we hear today.
Right, yeah. Well, I'm glad you told me that. And now I know that there's contemporary music being written for the harpsichord. That I did not know. So, you do learn something every day, and I'm thrilled that you're going to play it here for us. So harpsichord is only one of your instruments. We also know your vocal capability. That's an instrument. What else do you play?
Well, I play organ and piano. When I was in high school, I couldn't put a piano on the football field to play in the band. So I did take up the saxophone a little bit. And then, of course, the band director found out that I was really good with rhythm. So there was a season or two where I played the bass drum in the marching band. But then I did manage to become the drum major for the band in high school in my senior year. So I'm not really an instrumentalist. I can get through with a recorder, and if somebody put a saxophone in front of me, I could probably give Bill Clinton a run for his money, but that would be just about it. But I'm primarily a singer and a keyboardist. And interestingly, with the harpsichord, I use more of the manual technique that is familiar to me because of me being an organist.
Okay.
Playing a piano is actually very different from playing the organ or the harpsichord. And so you must study them each individually to get a sense about the uniqueness of the instruments. It is true that the keyboard is the same. I mean, it's the 7 A, B, C, D, E, F, G with the sharps and flats. So it has the same look as a piano or an organ might have. But there are specificities to each instrument that make them interesting. So many organists are also pretty good harpsichordists because the technique is very similar.
Speaking of organs.
Yes.
We can't let this little chat go by without talking about our magnificent hook organ.
Yes, indeed.
It's 1864. It was installed a few years after the hall opened. 3,504 pipes. It's a tracker instrument, so it's mechanical, like your harpsichord, and 4 keyboards.
Right. And it's the largest and oldest 4-keyboard tracker organ I know in the United States. Is it
Western Hemisphere?
Western Hemisphere. Yeah. So
in its installation site. Yeah.
It's absolutely true. No, I have to tell you that every colleague organist that I have who knows that I live in Worcester, their first question to me is, "Have you played the hook organ?" Because it's that well known around the professional circle and beyond the professional circle. It really is an extraordinarily well-known instrument.
Yeah.
And it's always a thrill to be able to play it just because of the notoriety of the instrument. But also it's just got its own character like any instrument, and like the hall does, it has its character. And it's been lovely to have the opportunity to discover some of that character over the years here.
We're really blessed here in Worcester to have so many organists able to tackle the hook, because not all organists have been able to do that.
Correct. You do need to be able to get your way around an instrument that is a mechanical action instrument that is, it's a workout. It is a workout, and you have to handle it with a certain kind of presence and power when you're at the instrument.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. But Worcester is a remarkable organ city.
Incredible.
Remarkable. I'm not sure that people in Worcester really know about the treasure. I mean, it's not only this organ, but there are many, many organs across the city that are really notable. And as you said, I have a host of enormously talented colleagues across the city. So for its size, Worcester is really an organ capital.
Yeah. We're going to do a video about exactly that. Coming up.
It needs to be done because it really, I think it should be a goal for us to help Worcesterites understand the position that Worcester has in the world in terms of the instruments and the professionals who serve those instruments.
Right, I agree,
city.
totally. And yes, we will be doing a video about that, exactly about that. So tell us about the pieces you have recorded for us today.
Right, so I'm going to begin with two pieces by Johann Sebastian Bach. I can't ignore playing some Baroque music, so I will play, or I played, when you're hearing this interview, his first prelude from the Well-Tempered Clavier, which was included also in the Anna Magdalena notebook, so it clearly was very, very dear to both Johann Sebastian Bach and to Anna Magdalena. And it is very well known. In fact, most people will immediately hear it when I begin, will recognize it when I begin to play it, largely because the piece much later was taken by a composer by the name of Charles Gounod, a French composer, and over the top of the Bach prelude, he wrote a counter melody that became one of the ways that we sing the prayer Ave Maria. So people, when I start playing it, they'll go, that's the Ave Maria. Well, it's Bach's prelude that later became the Ave Maria. And I'm playing it today because when I'm playing this, we're in the early days of Advent and preparing for Christmas. And I think people are thinking a little bit about Mary, the Mother of God, and thinking about what it would be like for her to be a welcoming God into her life. So this piece is for that occasion. And then I'll play another piece from the Anna Magdalena notebook. But I'm even more excited actually today to play one actually brand new piece just published just weeks ago in 2020. It's a set of variations on the German Christmas hymn Est ist ein Rose, which is in English, Lo, how a rose blooming.
Beautiful piece.
And this piece was written by a composer named Alfred Fedak, and he is living in Albany, New York, and he wrote this for a colleague of mine, a harpsichord colleague of mine, Scott Hyssop in Michigan. And I know it's been recorded for the publisher, but I don't know that it's been performed live yet. So I contacted Alfred and Scott to see if they had any information about whether there's been a public or online performance of it, and I don't know that it has. So this may be a premiere.
This may be a world premiere. That's so exciting.
The other piece that I'm going to play is a harpsichord piece by a Canadian composer, Michel. Now I'm not remembering his last name, but you'll see it on the list. Is a wonderful harpsichord fugue on Deck the Halls.
Oh, fun.
Again, written in the last decade for the harpsichord. It was written in a suite of pieces for brass and harpsichord that were all secular Christmas songs. And so the middle movement of this suite, he wrote just for the harpsichord on Deck the Halls. And I thought it would be fun for people to hear a rather secular Christmas carol dolled up in the way that you would hear it on a harpsichord. So those are the pieces that I've chosen to play today.
Wonderful. Well, again, welcome. Thank you so much for doing this on behalf of the hall. We're very grateful.
You're very, very welcome. This hall is enormously important to me, but it really is enormously important to every performing musician in the city because it is the center for us of where we can perform our art in a space that is welcoming of it, and to an audience that's excited to hear it. So I am just tickled to be able to do my small part in being able to help keep the hall present in people's minds, because in this time of the pandemic, it's hard to talk about a space that we can't necessarily get into.
Right.
So you have to watch it from afar.
For sure. So welcome back to our stage Mark Mummert, one of the many voices here in Worcester.
That piece by Johann Sebastian Bach, his Prelude in C major, is the way he begins his volume on the well-tempered clavier. It was also included in the Anna Magdalena notebook, so it was clearly a very dear and important composition for Johann Sebastian and his wife Anna Magdalena. Perhaps in hearing it, you recognized it. People, especially Roman Catholics, have perhaps heard that piece with the sung Ave Maria sung over top of it. That actually happened much later. A French composer by the name of Charles Gounod added that counter melody to Bach's Prelude to create his Ave Maria. So in this time when we're preparing for Christmas, I thought maybe it would be appropriate to evoke a little bit of Mary, whom Christians call the Mother of God, as we think about preparing to welcome God into our lives, into our chaos right now. I'd like to play another piece from the Anna Magdalena notebook, a simple and jaunty Musette. It's very likely that Anna Magdalena gathered these pieces, many of them simple pieces, to be played by her children. Some of you know the great stories of Johann Sebastian Bach, that he fathered 20 children. But it's perhaps important to say, as soon as we talk about him having fathered 20 children, that only 8 of them survived past the age of 3. That meant that many died in infancy. So in this time right now, when we are experiencing heightened death counts due to COVID, it is perhaps interesting to hear these melodies in relationship to lives that were experiencing death almost on a daily basis. And then to hear the joy and abandon and sort of openness to the freshness of life in these melodies from people who were deeply sorrowful and sad. So I hope maybe in this time, this melody brings you a little jaunt, a little joy, a little comfort in this particular time for you and for us. Because the harpsichord has a sound that we often associate with the Renaissance period or the Baroque period of music, we often think that music is only written that we only have old music written for the harpsichord. And it's perhaps interesting to note that there are composers living and breathing today who are creating music still for the harpsichord. So I'd like to play 2 pieces for you now that were written in the last years on Christmas melodies. The first is a piece by Michel Rondeau, a composer from Canada, who wrote a cycle of secular Christmas songs for trumpets, trombones, and harpsichord. That 5-set suite of pieces included an internal movement just for the harpsichord on the familiar carol, "Deck the Halls with Balls of Holly." And you'll hear that he uses the typical style of the Baroque fugue in his writing for the harpsichord. So it is a little bit of new wine in old wineskins here with this fugue on "Deck the Halls." I'd like to conclude this short program today with a set of variations on the German Christmas chorale, Es ist ein Rose, well known in English as Lo, how a rose blooming. This set of variations for harpsichord was composed just in these last weeks, published just a few weeks ago in 2020 by a composer by the name of Alfred Fedak. Fedak lives and works in Albany, New York, and he wrote these variations for organist and harpsichordist Scott Hislop of Frankenmuth, Michigan. This may be a premiere of these pieces. I don't know that they've been played yet in public, but you'll hear these 4 variations on the chorale that use the harpsichord in its typical idiomatic ways, but in a very, very fresh composition.